For 28 years, I felt like something was wrong with me. Then I asked one question that made everything make sense. The question was simple. So simple that when I finally asked it, I couldn't believe I'd spent nearly 3 decades not asking. But once the words left my mouth, the silence that followed told me everything I'd been too afraid to know. I'm Nina, and this is the story of how one unanswered question unraveled my entire childhood and set me free. I grew up knowing I was different. Not in an obvious way. I wasn't adopted, I wasn't abused in any textbook sense, and my parents weren't cruel. But there was something. A distance. A coolness. A persistent feeling that I was tolerated rather than loved. My parents, Richard and Susan, were in their late 30s when I was born. They'd been married for 12 years by then. They had good jobs, my dad in banking, my mom in HR at a pharmaceutical company. They lived in a nice suburb of Chicago. On paper, they were ready for a child. But in practice, something was always off. I have early memories of being very young, maybe 4 or 5, and trying to hug my mother. She wouldn't push me away, exactly. She'd just go stiff, like hugging a mannequin. She'd pat my back twice, efficiently, then gently extract herself. Okay, sweetheart. Mama needs to finish dinner now. My father was different. He wasn't cold, just absent. Physically present, but mentally somewhere else. He'd nod at appropriate times during my stories about school, say, "That's nice, honey," and go back to his newspaper. I learned early that I had about 90 seconds of his attention before his eyes would glaze over. I thought all parents were like this. I thought the warm, affectionate families I saw on TV were just fiction, like superheroes or talking animals. Then I went to my best friend Emma's house when I was 7. Her mom scooped her up in a hug the second we walked in. "There's my girl. How was school? Tell me everything." And she actually listened to the answer. She asked follow-up questions. She laughed at Emma's jokes. She tucked Emma's hair behind her ear while she talked. I watched this with the confusion of an anthropologist observing a foreign culture. When Emma's mom offered me a snack, she asked what I liked. When I said I didn't know, she seemed surprised. "Well, what does your mom usually give you?" "Whatever's easy," I said. She gave me this look I didn't understand then, but recognize now. Pity. I started paying more attention after that. To how my friends' parents interacted with them. The casual affection. The genuine interest in their lives. The way they'd light up when their kids walked into a room. My parents never lit up when I walked into a room. I tried to be better. More interesting. More lovable. I got straight A's. They said, "Good job," and moved on. I won the school art competition. My mom put the ribbon in a drawer and forgot about it. I made the basketball team. My dad came to one game, checked his watch throughout, and never came to another. They're just not demonstrative people, I told myself. They show love differently. But what if they just didn't love me at all? I pushed that thought down so deep I almost forgot it existed. In middle school, I started having anxiety attacks. The school counselor called my parents in for a meeting. I sat there while Mr. Peterson explained that I seemed to be struggling with self-esteem and possibly depression. My mother frowned. She's always been a worrier. Very high-strung. "She's young for her grade," my father added. "Maybe she's just immature compared to her classmates." "I'm concerned about her emotional well-being," Mr. Peterson said carefully. "Has there been any significant stress at home? Any changes in family dynamics?" "No," my mother said firmly. "Everything's fine at home. I think Nina just needs to learn better coping mechanisms. She's always been overly sensitive." Mr. Peterson suggested therapy. My parents said they'd think about it. They never brought it up again. I learned to manage the anxiety on my own. I learned to manage everything on my own. High school was more of the same. I was a good student, a decent athlete, had friends. I was fine. My parents were fine. Everything was fine. Except it wasn't. I noticed things. Small things that accumulated into a weight I carried everywhere. How my mom never took photos of me. Our house was full of photos of my parents before I was born, trips to Europe, dinner parties with friends, their wedding. But after I arrived, almost nothing. A few obligatory birthday shots that looked like chores being documented. School photos still in their plastic sleeves, never framed. How my dad never asked about my life unless prompted, and even then with the enthusiasm of someone making small talk with a stranger at a bus stop. How neither of them ever used terms of endearment. Not sweetie, or honey, or kiddo. Just Nina. Always just Nina. How they never fought for me. When I didn't make the varsity team, when I didn't get into my first choice college, when my boyfriend broke up with me senior year, they offered the same response every time. Well, these things happen. You'll be fine. No outrage on my behalf. No protective instinct. Just acceptance that I would experience disappointments and deal with them alone. I went to college in Wisconsin. Far enough to feel independent, but close enough that I was supposed to come home for holidays. Those visits were awkward affairs. We'd have dinner, make stilted conversation, and I'd escape back to my dorm feeling hollow. My roommate freshman year, Jessica, asked me once why I talked about my parents like distant relatives I was obligated to check in on. What do you mean? You never say my mom or my dad. You say Richard and Susan. Like they're, I don't know, acquaintances. I'd never noticed, but she was right. In therapy, which I finally started in college, my therapist asked me to describe my relationship with my parents. It's fine, I said automatically. Fine how? I struggled to articulate it. They're not mean. They provide for me. They're just not warm, not close. I don't think they really like me very much. Why do you think that? I don't know. I've always felt it. Like I'm an obligation they're fulfilling, but not enjoying. Have you ever asked them about this? Ask them what? Why don't you love me? Who asks that? But the question planted itself in my brain. After college, I moved to Minneapolis for work. Put even more distance between us. We talked maybe once a month. Surface-level conversations about weather and work. They never asked when I was coming to visit. I never offered. I dated, had relationships, but something was always broken in me. I couldn't quite believe that anyone could genuinely want me around, that I wasn't just being tolerated until something better came along. You have attachment issues. One boyfriend told me during our breakup. You push people away because you're afraid they'll leave first. He wasn't wrong. My therapist and I worked on this, traced it back to my parents, to growing up feeling unwanted, to learning that love was conditional, and I'd never quite met the conditions. Have you considered talking to them about how you feel? Dr. Morrison asked. What would I say? The truth. That you felt unloved growing up. That you're carrying that pain into your adult relationships. That you need to understand why. They'll just say I'm being overly sensitive. That I'm misremembering. That they did their best. Maybe. But you won't know unless you try. I didn't try. Not for years. But the question kept growing.
Why?
Why did they have me if they didn't want me? Why did they keep me at arm's length my entire life? Why did I always feel like an unwelcome guest in my own home? When I turned 28, I got engaged to David. He was kind, patient, willing to deal with my emotional walls. When we started planning the wedding, he asked about my parents' involvement. They'll come to the wedding, I said. But they won't really be involved. Have you asked them to be involved? They don't care about that stuff. How do you know? I didn't know. I just knew. David's parents were the opposite of mine. Warm, enthusiastic, constantly texting him funny things or asking how he was doing. His mom cried when we told her we were engaged. Actually cried with joy. I couldn't imagine my mother crying with joy about anything involving me. David's family welcomed me immediately. His mom asked about my life, remembered details I'd mentioned in passing, sent me recipes she thought I'd like. His dad told terrible jokes and gave me enthusiastic hugs. Being around them was wonderful and excruciating. It showed me everything I'd never had. One night, after a dinner with David's family where his mom had shown me his baby photos and told embarrassing stories and generally treated me like I'd always been part of the family, I cried the whole drive home. What's wrong? David asked, alarmed. Your mom loves you so much.
Yeah.
I'm lucky. My parents have never looked at me the way your mom looks at you. He was quiet. Then, I know. You know? Nina, I've met your parents. They're polite.
Distant.
They treat you like a colleague, not a daughter. I didn't want to say anything, but yeah, I've noticed. Something in me cracked. Why don't they love me? I don't know. But I think you should ask them. I thought about it for weeks. Rehearsed the conversation in my head. Imagined their responses. Talked it to death in therapy. Finally, Dr. Morrison said, "You're looking for the perfect way to ask a question that has no perfect answer. You're never going to feel ready. You just have to ask." I called my mom and asked if I could come over to talk. Just me, no David. She sounded surprised but agreed. I drove to their house on a Saturday afternoon. The same house I'd grown up in, though they'd redecorated since I'd left. Erased most traces of my childhood. My old room was now a home office. We sat in the living room, the three of us. My parents on one couch, me on the other. They looked at me expectantly, like I was about to present a report. "I wanted to talk to you about something that's been bothering me," I started. My heart was pounding. My whole life I felt like you don't really like me, like I'm an obligation, like you're going through the motions of being parents, but your hearts aren't in it. My mother's face went carefully neutral. My father shifted uncomfortably. "I don't understand why you're bringing this up," my mother said. "Because I need to understand. I'm getting married, I'm thinking about having kids someday, and I need to know, why did you have me if you didn't want me?" "That's not fair," my father said. "We provided for you. We gave you a good home, good education." "I'm not talking about providing. I'm talking about love, about affection, about acting like you actually enjoyed having a daughter. We're not very demonstrative people," my mother started. "No. Stop. I've heard that my whole life. This isn't about being demonstrative. This is about fundamental warmth, connection. I've seen how other parents are with their kids. It's not the same." They looked at each other. Some silent communication passed between them. "What do you want us to say?" my mother asked. "I want the truth. Was I an accident? Did you try to have a baby and then regret it? Did you want a different child than the one you got? What is it about me that made you so unable to love me?" "We do love you," my father said, but it sounded rehearsed. Automatic. "Then why have I spent 28 years feeling completely alone in my own family?" Silence. My mother folded her hands in her lap. "Nina, I think you're being very dramatic about this. I'm asking a simple question. Why was I never enough for you? You were always enough. Then why did you treat me like an inconvenience? Why did you never come to my games or performances? Why did you never take pictures of me? Why did you never want to know about my life? Why did every interaction feel like you were checking off a box on a to-do list?" My father stood up. "I think you're upset and not thinking clearly. Maybe we should have this conversation another time." "No. I need you to answer me. Right now. One question." I looked at both of them. "Did you want me?" The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear the clock ticking in the kitchen. My mother's face was stone. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. "Did you want me?" I asked again, my voice breaking. "When you had me, when you brought me home, when you raised me, did you actually want me? Or was I something you felt obligated to do?" My mother stood up. "I think this conversation is over. Answer the question." "Nina, you're being unreasonable. Answer the question." My father finally looked at me. His face was pained. "It's not that simple." "It is that simple. Yes or no. Did you want me?" My mother walked toward the kitchen. "I need some water." "Mom, answer me." She kept walking. I looked at my father. "Dad." He ran his hand over his face. "Nina, your mother, and we had a good life before you were born. We were happy. We had plans. And then I happened. And then things changed. We did our best to adapt, but you never wanted to adapt. You wanted your old life back." He didn't answer. My mother returned with a glass of water. "I think you should go." "Tell me I'm wrong," I said. "Tell me you wanted me. Tell me you were happy to have me. Tell me one memory of me as a child that brought you joy." They both stood there, silent. "One memory," I whispered. "Just one. Of you being glad I existed." My mother's jaw tightened. "You're being cruel." "I'm being cruel? I'm asking my parents to tell me they loved me as a child, and you can't do it." "Love isn't about moments," my father said. It's about responsibility, about commitment. We committed to raising you, and we did. Committed, like a chore. That's not what I meant. Yes, it is. That's exactly what you meant. I stood up. My legs felt shaky. You had me and you resented it. You raised me because you had to, not because you wanted to. And you've spent my entire life making me feel it. We never said that, my mother said sharply. You didn't have to say it. I felt it every single day. Every time you stiffened when I hugged you. Every time you forgot my school events. Every time you looked at me like you were trying to remember why I was in your house. You're twisting everything. I'm stating facts. And the fact that you still can't answer one simple question tells me everything I need to know. I picked up my purse. Where are you going? My father asked. Anywhere but here. I came looking for an answer, and I got one. Just not with words. Nina, don't leave like this, my mother said, but there was no warmth in it. Just obligation. Just checking another box. Try to make daughter stay.
Why?
So you can pretend this conversation didn't happen? So you can go back to our surface-level relationship where I pretend you're normal parents and you pretend I'm not an inconvenience. You're being dramatic, my mother said.
No.
I'm being honest. For the first time in my life, I'm saying what I've always felt. And you can't even deny it. You can't even lie and say you wanted me. I walked toward the door. We did our best, my father said quietly. I turned back. Your best was making me feel unwanted my entire life? Your best was making me believe there was something fundamentally wrong with me that made me unlovable? Your best was treating your only child like a burden you were too polite to acknowledge. We fed you, clothed you, educated you. You did the bare minimum required to not be reported to child services. Congratulations. I opened the door. Nina, my mother said.
Her voice had changed. Softer.
Almost vulnerable. You don't understand. When you were born, I had postpartum depression.
Severe.
I couldn't bond with you. And by the time it passed, it felt too late. The distance was already there. I stopped. And I couldn't bring myself to try to close it. Every time I looked at you, I felt guilty for not loving you the way I should have from the beginning. So, I just maintained the distance. It was easier than trying to fix something that felt broken from the start. I turned around slowly. You're telling me that you had a medical condition that prevented you from bonding with me, and instead of getting help or trying to fix it, you just gave up? For 28 years. She looked at her hands. Yes. And you? I looked at my father. What's your excuse? I followed your mother's lead. She was so detached and I didn't know how to bridge that gap. So I didn't. I stayed on her side of the gap instead of yours. The words hung in the air. So you both chose each other over me, I said slowly. For my entire life. You chose to stay distant from your own daughter rather than do the hard work of actually being parents. We thought you were fine, my mother said. You were so independent, so self-sufficient. Because I had to be. Because you gave me no choice. We're sorry, my father said. We should have done better. We know that now.
Now.
You know that now. When I'm 28. When I've spent my entire life believing I was fundamentally unlovable. When I've sabotaged relationships because I can't believe anyone would actually want me. When I've built my entire identity around being someone who doesn't need anyone because needing people means being disappointed. We didn't know it was affecting you this badly, my mother said. I laughed. It sounded hysterical. How could you know? You never asked. You never looked. You never cared enough to notice. That's not true. It is true. And the fact that I had to be the one to bring this up, that you've spent 28 years never once thinking, maybe we should talk to our daughter about our relationship with her, that tells me everything. I walked out. They didn't follow me. I sat in my car in their driveway for 20 minutes, shaking. They didn't come out to check on me. I could see them through the window, sitting on their couch, talking to each other. Not about how to fix this. Just processing. Probably already figuring out how to move past it. I drove to David's apartment. He took one look at my face and pulled me into his arms. They didn't want me, I said into his chest. They never wanted me, and they admitted it. He held me while I cried. Didn't try to fix it or minimize it or tell me it would be okay. Just held me. Later, when I could talk, I told him everything. The question. Their non-answers. The silence that said more than words. My mother's confession about postpartum depression and giving up. My father's admission that he chose my mother over me. What do you want to do? David asked. I don't know. I got the answer I needed, but I don't know what to do with it. You don't have to do anything right now. But I did know. I knew immediately, actually. I just needed time to accept it. I didn't call them. Didn't text. Didn't respond when they sent careful messages asking if I was okay, if we could talk. I talked to Dr. Morrison instead. They confirmed what you've always known, she said. That must be validating and devastating at the same time. It is. I was right. I wasn't being overly sensitive or misunderstanding. They really didn't want me. How does that feel? Like relief and grief at the same time. Relief that I'm not crazy. Grief for the child I was, who knew she wasn't wanted but had to pretend everything was fine. What do you need now? I thought about it. I need to stop waiting for them to become the parents I needed. They're not going to. They admitted they chose not to. And I need to accept that and move on. What does moving on look like? I don't know yet. But I think it starts with not having them at my wedding. David supported the decision completely. Your wedding should be filled with people who love you and want to be there. They've proven they're neither. My mother called when she got the invitation. Nina, you're being irrational. We can work through this. There's nothing to work through, Mom. You told me you couldn't bond with me and chose not to fix it. That's not something we can work through. That's just the truth of our relationship. So, you're cutting us off over something that happened when you were a baby?
No.
I'm cutting you off because you had 28 years to fix it and you chose not to. Every single day, you chose distance over connection. You chose comfort over courage. You chose your marriage over your daughter. It's not that simple. It is that simple. You made choices. I'm making mine. I'm choosing to surround myself with people who actually want me in their lives. You'll regret this. Maybe. But I regret wasting 28 years trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it more. I hung up. The wedding was beautiful. Small, intimate, filled with people who showed up enthusiastically. David's parents cried. My friends made toasts about how I'd grown into myself, how I was finally allowing myself to be loved. I didn't miss my parents. Not that day. I missed the parents I should have had. The ones who would have wanted to help plan the wedding, who would have cried during the ceremony, who would have been proud instead of obligated. But I don't miss Richard and Susan. Because they were never really my parents. They were just two people who had a child they didn't want and did the bare minimum required. It's been 2 years now. I've had therapy. I've grieved. I've worked through the attachment issues and the belief that I'm unlovable. I've learned that their failure to love me wasn't about me being unlovable. It was about them being incapable. David and I are expecting our first child in 3 months.
A daughter.
My mother sent a card when she found out. Congratulations. I hope you'll reconsider our estrangement before the baby arrives. Every child should know her grandparents. I threw the card away. Because here's what I know. My daughter will never wonder if she's wanted. She'll never feel like an obligation or an inconvenience. She'll never have to ask if I love her because she'll feel it in every interaction, every day, from the moment she's born. She'll never have to ask the question I asked. And if that's the only thing I do right as a parent, it'll be enough. Because I know what it's like to grow up with a question unasked. And I know what it's like to finally ask it and have the answer be silence. I won't let my daughter inherit that silence. She'll inherit love instead. The kind I had to learn to give myself because no one gave it to me. The kind Richard and Susan never learned to give at all. Last week, I found an old journal from when I was 9. There was an entry that said, "Sometimes I think Mom and Dad would be happier if I wasn't here. But I don't know how to ask without making them mad." I cried reading it. For that 9-year-old who already knew the answer, but was too afraid to hear it said out loud. But I also felt something else. Fierce protective love for that little girl. And pride that she survived. That she grew up. That she finally asked the question, even though the answer broke her heart, because the silence was the answer. And knowing the answer, as painful as it was better than spending a lifetime pretending not to know. Asked my parents one question they couldn't answer, and their refusal to answer became my freedom.